Hi guys, welcome back. Thanks for tuning into my channel. Today we're going to talk about hair care and especially customized hair care for your particular type of hair. I know there's a lot of information about there and all kind of techniques and product use and yada yada yada, but everyone's hair is different. And what I want to show you today is how it is that you find the perfect routine regimen product use for your particular hair type, because only you can wear your hair. So there are 5 factors you need to consider when looking on determining your hair type. And just to say, because a lot of people think hair type is not a big deal, or we make too much of a big deal about hair type sometimes. And in a way that is true. Socially, for some reasons, persons get caught up in typing, especially curl pattern numbers, and they've kind of made it a divisive issue. And that really, I think, stems back to some deep-rooted, mindsets that have to be broken. But at the end of the day, really, your hair typing is just for you to know what particular issues or characteristics that your hair has, so that you know how to take care of your own hair. That's all it's about. It's really just pure science. So the 5 factors you're going to look on today are our curl pattern, your porosity, your hair texture or your width, your hair density or volume, and of course your length. So curl pattern is the thing that most people are familiar with, and many of us probably have heard of a number series from type 1s to type 4s, and that is really based off the Paul Walker system. There have been different variations and sub-variations of that, but essentially, in a nutshell, type 1s are straight hair, type 2s tend to be wavy, whirly, type 3s are curly, and type 4s are very kinky or coily. And then, of course, they break down into sub-variations of A to C, depending on just how tight or loose the wave or coil is. And so that is really, again, just for the purpose of having an idea of knowing how you care for your hair and the factors and characteristics that you need to know about your hair. And this is very important, this typing thing, because you have to learn your hair. As part of the process of loving your hair and learning to love your hair, is that you have to learn about your hair, and you cannot properly care for your hair until you learn about it. So the curl typing system really just indicates generally what types of products you can carry in your hair, because typically it's not an absolute. Typically, no, the curl pattern ties in a lot with the width or the texture. And for width factors, you're either typically fine, you have fine strands of hair, or you have medium strands of hair, that's thickness or width we're talking about, or you have coarse strands of hair. And they usually tie in and with the curl pattern, and you have to factor these two in together when you're looking at how you take care of your hair. Typically, wavies tend to have fine hair, curlies tend to have medium hair, and kinkies tend to be coarse. But again, it's not absolute, because you have wavies with coarse hair and you have kinkies with fine hair and all kind of variations in between. So you have to factor those in. So typically we might say that wavies may want to use lighter products. For instance, you may want to stay with light oils, or some persons may want to avoid oils altogether, depending on just how fine the hair is. But if you're wavy or fine textured, typically you need light products that don't weigh your hair down. And so you need to find the products that give you the right balance of moisture but still preserve the volume, because nobody wants limp hair. Okay, so that is usually typically a concern if you have wavy or fine hair. If you have curly hair and you have medium textures, then typically you can use some amount of butters and oils, lighter butters and oils. And of course, kinkier, coarser textures typically would use rich butters, rich oils, because of course one of the main issues, the 2 things that we want to address with curl pattern, is that you have to address detangling and you have to address curl definition. And of course, the coilier or curlier, tighter the curl is, detangling now becomes more of something that you have to master, and master well. And I know most persons will say detangling is a pain, but once you really learn how to detangle properly, it's not that big an issue really. But of course, like you said, kinkier, coarser textures typically need richer oils and butters in their products, and that will help with detangling and helping in preserving curl definition. And especially, for wavies, curl definition is something that they really want to strive towards, because typically they want to keep as much as a curl as possible in their hair presentation. So those are factors that usually come into play when you're thinking about your curl pattern. And of course, like I said, they tie in with your curl texture, your hair width or hair thickness. So those are things you need to think about. If you, of course, are wavy with coarse textures, you can actually probably get away with some butters or moderate, low density butters and oils. And of course, if you're kinky but you have finer hair, the same thing applies. You don't want to be too heavy with your oils, because your finer hair starts to look greasy, or it doesn't hang very well. So those are things you need to think about in terms of your curl pattern. Now, the other thing that you need to think about, of course, this is very, very important, is porosity. Because porosity really gives a good indication of the health of your hair and the makeup of your hair strands and your cuticles. Now, a hair strand is overlain by cuticles, which, if you kind of think of it like a snake skin, so to speak, a snake skin, you see it has these tight cell patterns in the skin. That it's sort of what hair looks like. Now, if you think about that, those leaf-like coverings or those leaf-like patterns of a skin, can either be tightly coiled together. That's in low porosity hair. And low porosity hair type, the cuticles are very tight together, and so what it therefore means is that typically things take a long time to absorb. You'll hear persons with low porosity type of hair, that product just sits on the hair, or the hair takes forever to dry, because the water is not being absorbed, the products aren't being absorbed. And you need to know if you have low porosity hair, because if that is the case, typically you need some kind of heat or other manipulation to really help with the absorption of products. And I don't mean heat necessarily in terms of a blow dryer or some things that cause heat damage, but for instance, if you're conditioning your hair, you're definitely going to want to apply like a hot towel or some kind of heat covering over the plastic cap that you would have on, so that you can help the process along. So you need to know that about your hair, so you can know how to manipulate and how to really cater to your hair health, because product on your hair not absorbed is really useless. Moderate porosity are persons that may have the cuticles that is slightly lifted, so absorption happens at pretty well. There's not much loss of moisture in terms of the other way out. There's a good balance. And the high porosity now is when your cuticles actually are very lifted. And so it also means that nutrients and moisture can leave the hair strand or the hair cortex very easily. And usually, if a person has high porosity hair, while genetics could be a reason, typically if you have high porosity, it may indicate damage. So definitely, if your hair is chemically processed in any way, especially like coloring or chemical relaxing, or if you do a lot of heat treatments like flat ironing and regular blow drying, you're probably going to have high porosity hair, because these factors affect the health of the strand and damage the cuticle. So the hair care aspect here is important, and therefore if you find that you have a high or medium porosity, you do want to have regular protein treatments, probably at least twice a month, depending on how bad the issue is, or how bad any damage is, or how high your porosity is. If you have very high porosity hair, you probably need to do a protein treatment even 3 times a month, maybe every 10 days or so. So that is something you also need to look at as well. And of course, now if you have low porosity hair, then you probably need protein treatments, say once a month, and you need to work more on moisture. So the protein moisture balance is really what comes into play here when you're talking about porosity, because you need to have a right balance of moisture and a right balance of protein to keep the health of your hair ideal. So that is what happens in terms of porosity. So now about your curl pattern, now about your thickness, now about your porosity. And then of course, now the secondary factors are of course your hair density. and that just has to do with the volume or the amount of hair on your head. So again, this factors in especially with just how much product you need to use. Of course, if your hair is very sparse, then you technically don't need a lot of product on your hair. Of course, again, you would usually need to watch the amount of product that you do put on your hair so that you don't have weighing down. And of course, if you have lots and lots of hair on your head, then you would need more product. Of course, you know, if you have a lot of hair, you need the technique that now becomes very important is just simple sectioning. You need to have an idea of how it is that your hair tends to fall or the direction your hair tends to want to lie, just so that you can manipulate it best. But typically section is important, and most persons you'll probably hear will suggest, you know, section your hair into 4, or if your hair is extremely thick you may need to, you know, even go into 6. But sectioning really helps in terms of just how you manage your hair, from washing and styling and everything. You know, and when persons say that natural hair is hard to get, difficult to handle, it's just little things like that, little tricks and tips that many people are not aware of. Section your hair when you work with it, when you're washing, when you're conditioning, and you're styling. When you find that you work with sections at a time, then the process just becomes a lot easier, and it's not this pain that many people imagine it is. You know, it's just some knowledge that really makes a difference. And of course, now length just really has to deal with the fact that, of course, the longer your hair is, the more exposed it has been. And especially if you have very, very long hair, you need to give your lower half of your hair extra attention. Of course, you know, issues that the fact that, you know, apart from the fact that if you have curly hair, you know, natural hair oils don't travel down very far in your hair strands. So you need to really take the time to address the full length of your hair, give extra protein and extra moisture, deep conditioning and treatments, especially to the lower half of your hair. That's very important. Okay, so that's pretty much what has to do with length. And of course, detangling techniques, of course, as well. You know, you really need to really make sure that when you're handling your hair, especially if it's wet or you're washing, that you really tuck it away very well when you're dealing with other sections of your hair. So those are just some simple things that you need to take into consideration when it comes into your hair care routine and your hair care management. And once you address and know these things, and handling your hair really becomes a breeze and even a pleasure. So I hope this video was really informative to you. You know, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. More videos are coming on the way, and I'm just eager to share this information with you, and hope to see you soon. Take care, guys. Bye bye.